Hello and welcome to another episode of Not a Life Sentence. My guest today is a grief acceptance coach that helps people heal from grief and loss. He has not always been a grief coach. He's endured very big losses himself that forced him to help himself through helping others. Chris Mamone, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing well, Carla. Thanks for having me on your podcast today.
It's awesome to have you on it, Chris. What do you do and how do you serve people?
So, I'm what's called an acceptance coach, and what I do is I help move people who are going through a place of pain into a place of purpose in their life. And I work with people going through grief, loss, and trauma. And what I do is help them find that first stage of acceptance so that they can start creating a new inspired life going forward.
Chris, was I right in saying that you were sort of forced to help yourself by helping others?
I really was. As one of my podcast guests told me in the middle of an episode I was doing, they said, grief chose you and you chose grief.
Let's talk a little bit about you and your personal life. You are married to Christina, a lovely lady whom I got to speak to a few times. What does Christina have that made you say, I would love to spend the rest of my life with her?
So, the best part that I love about my wife, we've been together 17 years now, which is amazing. In
Hmm.
many ways, we're opposites, and I love that about us because she has helped me grow and change into the person that I am today. And so, I'm very, very grateful that she pushes me hard in life. I love that about her. She's a very, very sweet, kind person. She's always been that way since the day I met her. She always makes sure she takes care of other people. She has a very, very big heart. Uh, when we had our first son, Caden, I saw love come out of her like I've never seen before. It was absolutely incredible. She's
Hmm.
just a beautiful person that always is growing, always is learning, always is changing, always trying to be a better person. And she's somebody I look up to in my life, and I'm very grateful that I've gotten to spend 17 years with her.
Hmm. Before meeting Christina, you were in many toxic relationships. What do you think then shifted for you to have chosen, a decent, loving person?
I'll be honest, Carla. A lot of those situations that I was in before meeting her, I had a lot of inner work I needed to do, and I didn't know how to navigate that. I didn't have the resources to figure out how. So it was a big. I can tell you guys this now. I couldn't tell you this 17 years ago, but there's a lot of things I needed to learn in life, and I was a very lost person. I had a lot of anger problems, a lot of just not sure who I am or where I wanted to go or what I wanted to be. I attracted people that were like that into my life, and so I kind of perpetuated the problem with people in my life up until that point. And so I set out on a personal transformation journey at that point because I decided that what was going on wasn't working, it wasn't serving me. So something had to change, and the only thing I could control really was myself. And so at that point, it was looking inwards and making some choices to grow as a person and
Hmm.
rewire some of the mindsets I've had.
There is a concept in psychology that explains that um, we get in life what we think we deserve internally. So
Mhm.
it looks like you didn't have high respect for yourself then, or you didn't believe that you deserved happiness.
I was a very big people pleaser, Carla. I always put other people before myself, and I always sought validation from everybody around me. And when you do that, by the way, you give up your personal power, you give up yourself, you give up your identity, and you really become somebody who has no idea who you are. And it's a very, very scary place to be. And so, when you are in that mindset, you're not taking care of yourself. It's the old adage that people talk about when they fly planes: put your oxygen mask on first before you help other people. People like me that were people pleasers and people who are people pleasers right now, I will say you're putting that mask on everybody else and you're starving yourself in the process. And so
Mm,
um, you got to make that internal shift to put your own mask on.
yeah. What is it that has triggered you to go and seek help or to say, I need to work on myself?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll share that all of us have a breaking point in life. I've seen it in everybody I coach and every walk of life in my careers. And what I'll share with you, by the way, is some people, when they hit the breaking point, will continue to stay on that path, no matter how painful it gets. They will stay on the path, and they will always have disappointment and heartache and brokenness going on. When other people hit a breaking point, kind of like myself, they wake up and say, what I'm doing and what I'm getting from what I'm working on in my life isn't working. And so at this point, I'm looking for a change. And that's where, people change either for desperation or inspiration. I was one of those people that said how I was living my life just isn't working. I got to do something different. And so that came in the form of seeking out therapy, that came in the form of hiring a coach. That came in the form of reading lots of books, watching a lot of podcasts, watching a lot of TED Talks. I mean, I was just became a personal development junkie. And so
Mhm.
I was able to shed a lot of those beliefs and a lot of those behaviors and ideals and things like that. I was able to shed them really quickly because of
Mm.
that action I took.
It looks like you were ready for that shift and that change. Um, Christina and you struggled with fertility. How long did you struggle for before you guys got pregnant?
We struggled for about, I want to say 7 to 8 years is about as
Oh,
far as we struggled with infertility. Um, It's surprisingly, I didn't know this till we went through that journey, but it is more common than people talk about, more common than people are aware of. Um, I also found that out when we lost Caden, that 120,000 stillbirths happen just in America every year. So
oh,
it is not uncommon, as the big lesson I learned.
oh. So 3 or 4 years ago, can you take us back to the day when you got to know that you were expecting?
I can. So I was unemployed for about I want to say probably about 6 months or so. I got a new job at a bank being a manager, and that job turned out to be very toxic. It was not a good place. And long story short, on a particular day, I was not having a good day in January. My wife told me we were pregnant with our first kid, and I remember whatever happened that morning. I don't even remember, like off the map. I got so excited I picked her up. I was so excited because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how I was going to feel, but when I heard, we were going to have a little munchkin running around, I said, I'm excited about this. Like this is going to be awesome.
Hmm. Um, your in-laws were giving your wife hard time. They are narcissists. Are you able to share with us how they made your wife's life and yours hard, and how did you two handle the situation?
I'll share with you that's not one of my prouder moments of life. I'll share that, but my in-laws were very verbally and emotionally abusive towards my wife and I. Um, they made a lot of very insensitive comments, such as this pregnancy isn't going the way we want, and I don't understand why you won't share certain things with us. They just had no respect for boundaries. Anytime that we tried to say, hey, that was hurtful, or hey, don't talk that way, or be mindful that this is about us and not you, they fought back very aggressively with yelling, screaming, bullying, uh, saying a lot of very hurtful, very aggressive things. Uh, it was very hard for me personally to watch my wife have to go through that. So I
Hmm.
eventually got involved with them, and I had a lot of not so pleasant conversations with them. I'll just say that it was not my finest hour. But when you have a child coming into the world, As my grandfather used to tell me, the child comes first, your wife is second, you're third, everybody else in the family is behind you. And so I took that to heart because my child is who mattered. My wife is who mattered. Um, it wasn't about me, and it sure as hell wasn't about them. And so I defended my wife a lot. It was a lot of screaming, a lot of crazy phone calls with people, and lots of tension, lots of stress. Unfortunately, that never went away the whole time we were pregnant, and even after we lost him, it never went away. And
Mm,
they had used a lot of blame and guilt and shame tactics to, um, on my wife and I, and that was very hard to watch my wife be pregnant with the child. And when your wife is going through being pregnant, by the way, her body's changing all over the place, hormones and everything. And the thing that you don't
mm.
need on top of that is stress. That's the one thing we did not want, but it came that way. Um, and so I do, in a lot of ways, I have mixed feelings about things because I feel like their behavior contributed to what happened after all that. But at the same time, my son was the biggest gift we ever got. And so I celebrate him every day with what I do. And I'm always
Mm.
grateful to my wife even more because she gave me the biggest gift I could ever get in life. And there's no kind of money or possession that would ever even come close to the gift I got getting to hold my son.
What date was your son Caden due to arrive?
So, little man was born on September 23rd, 2022.
Right. And what happened?
Uh, so unfortunately, the day before he was supposed to be born, he stopped moving around and kicking in the afternoon. We went to the ER after meeting our midwife in the evening, and long story short, his heart stopped. That was a really I have a hard time talking about that day. I can give you guys the surface level on that, but it was a very shocking situation that I found myself in. There was nothing I could say or do that was going to fix that or change it. There was no take back on that. It was very, very hard to watch my wife go through that because there was nothing I could really do to fix it. And to watch my wife lose our child was by far one of the most painful moments of my life, and it's something that I don't wish that on anybody, because you'll go through life and you'll face challenges, you'll face hardship, but when you see an infant pass away, that is very, very hard. Um, and so that moment was just filled with a lot of shock. I don't remember much of that evening. It
Mm.
was a lot of shock. It was a lot of grief. The next day, we went to the hospital to give birth to him. And I will say this, we got to meet Caden. He was a beautiful, beautiful little boy. He was something else. I remember I was crying my eyes out the whole time, but when I got to hold him, I stopped crying for some reason. I still to this day don't know why. But I had the big smile on my face, and all the nurses in the room, they were all just like, he's adorable. His nose is cute. He was a little heart stopper with the nurses. I don't know what the deal was with that, but he
Mm.
took everybody on that day. But one of my favorite moments, though, is that, right after my wife gave birth to him, I let her hold him first. I had to do that. And I saw nothing but love from a very, very deep place from my wife to Caden. And it's a beautiful memory I have out of a very painful, tragic moment of life. And it's something that I've never, never forgotten. It's crystal clear in my head because that kind of love we rarely see on the planet. And it's something that comes, Carly, you have two. That love in that moment is very, very special and it's one of a kind.
Definitely. When parents hold their dead child, what state of mind they are in?
For me, I felt every emotion under the bag. I felt everything from I was happy to meet him. I was in
Mm.
shock about how I looked at baby pictures after we left the hospital. And anyway, he had a lot of my features I had when I was a baby. So I loved him. I just had nothing but love for this child. I don't know how to explain it. It felt like somebody put a curtain up around us and the rest of the world didn't matter. It was just me and my wife and Caden. And when I held him, I couldn't do anything but love the child. I couldn't even give space for myself to process what happened. I literally just, I held him like he was alive. I held him, I loved him. I kissed him a lot. I held him till my arms gave out. He just was something special. And I don't know what to say, but anger and sadness, I didn't really feel that when I held him. I just felt nothing
Mm,
but this very, very deep love, unconditional love for him. And that's a feeling I hold tight to every day.
mm. Whose idea was it to have the photo shoot, which is an awesome idea?
Uh, so the night that we went to the hospital and found out his heart stopped, there was this nurse named Chandler there, beautiful woman. Uh, she told us his heart stopped, and she herself was trying to hold back tears. She was trying to stay at the hospital, but she couldn't do it. She came back the next day. I don't even know how she found us, by the way, or found out we were in the hospital. But she came back that night after he was born, and she said, "I don't know if you remember me or not." And I said, "Well, I sure do." I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "I needed to check in on you guys because that was very, very hard last night, and I wanted to make sure you were okay." And so she got us food in the cafeteria after they closed. I don't know how she pulled that off, but she got us food because we didn't eat all day. Um, she also came back after she brought the food and she said, "Hey, I called a local photographer that works at the hospital. When we have situations like this, she comes in and takes photos for you guys." And she said, "I don't know if you want that or not, but she said, I feel like you need it." And she said, "We're not going to charge you for that, by the way. That's on the hospital. But we don't want you to go away without photos because you're going to regret that." Um,
Mm.
and I just sat there and said, "I don't even know this lady. I met her 24 hours ago in a deep shock state blur." And for her to get a photographer set up for us was incredible. So we have about 70 pictures of him and his little onesie and just us holding him. And I'm just so grateful to Chandler. I swear that woman was like an angel from God. She she was there in the darkest moment of life to make something beautiful out of it. And so I'm very grateful for people like that I met on this journey.
How long did you have Caden, or how long did you have time with him?
I had less than 24 hours with him. It was very, I don't want to share too many details, but I'll just say the body starts to deteriorate really fast, especially in that
Yeah.
situation. And so um, I just, if I could have stayed with him forever, I would have. I'll say that. But we had less than 24 hours with him, and we left him with Chandler at the hospital. She held him as we left, and I was glad this woman, I don't know how to say it, but she was there for us from start to finish with this whole thing. And so that was a really hard day. I have a hard time talking about that, but that was a very hard minute. But
Of
I'm just
course.
glad I got that time because there's
Mm.
a lot of parents that don't get that, and it's very, very sad.
I must say, looking at the pictures on your social media, uh, you and Christina look really happy holding him. And you have just mentioned that as soon as you held him, you forgot all the anger, all the sadness. Uh, it's a real joy just seeing the bond that you had, and you still, of course, do and have for Caden.
Yeah, he's exactly the reason I do what I do today. I don't I don't know
Mm,
what happened after, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks after we lost him. And we were at home not having a good day with grief, and I don't know what possessed me, but I said everything great that happens in my life going forward is all going to start with him. And I said, I don't even know why, but I said, I'm making a premonition about that. Uh, and so long story short, it's been happening in my life. There's a lot of good things that have been happening, uh, because of where I'm at with my podcasts and what I do with coaching people. And it comes towards me. I don't have to chase it. But he put me on a path. My son, he put me on a path, and I never would have been here, by the way. If you asked me 5 years ago, I'd say I'm out coaching on grief. I wouldn't be here. And today I say I love it. I talk to people that are in very dark places in grief and very hard places, and it's been nothing but wonderful to be able to help people in that capacity because grief doesn't get talked about a lot, and people get told to get over it and move on, and life happens, and our human bodies don't work that way. We're full of emotions, so it's been a real honor to hold space for people in the grief
Mm,
space.
mm. What is your take on, this nurse showing up on that day at that time and suggesting the photo shoot? You didn't know her. She wasn't part of, the staff looking after you. Um, how do you explain these things when they happen?
I've been on a big spiritual walk the last 5 years, and what I will say, I can only really explain that the universe looks out for you. And I know that sounds kind of out there for a lot of people who are about to listen to this podcast, but if you keep your eyes open and your ears listening, you'll never be surprised at what opportunities will come flying your way. And one of those opportunities, by the way, is when you are in a moment of grief like that, when you are in a place where you don't know what you're doing or what's going to happen, or you're in a tragic moment like I was faced with. I will say, if you want to call it God, you want to call it the universe, a higher power, whatever you want to label it, there's always something looking out for you. And so that's how I explain uh, that lady Chandler being part of that journey. I mean, I never would have asked her for anything that she did that day. I would never have even thought of it. And she just stepped in and did that for us. And so I always say that we all have angels around us. We all have spirit guides around us. They're all walking our path with us. And in those darkest moments where you feel alone and you feel there's no hope and it's looking real dark, I will tell you you're not alone. And I know it's going to feel like that, but you're not alone. There's always something
Mm,
there that's going to push you in the right direction, and there's going to be something that gives you a hand to reach out to. So just, I always encourage people to stay open-minded to that.
mm. Are you still in touch with her?
I haven't been. I wasn't able to get her information before we left. I've actually thought about writing her a letter recently. My therapist suggested that. Um, I've always thought about her over the years. Like I said, she was an angel in a very dark night, and I just, for whatever reason, God put her on our path, and I'm forever grateful for that because that moment could have been so much more painful than it was, and because of a lot of things she did that for us on both those days, it made it just a little bit easier.
Sometimes with some people, it's maybe best to, for them to remain as angels and just to keep their memory, I guess. Um, Losing Caden was unfortunately not your first experience with grief. You lost your beloved grandfather, Peter, and that was Caden's middle name. What can you tell us about your grandfather? You have mentioned it
Uh,
today.
My grandfather, simply put, the most amazing man I've met in my life. I will say that. He was quite a character. He was a socialite. If you ever went to a party, you'd lose that man in about 20 minutes. He'd be off talking to all sorts of people. He was always friends with everybody. He used to be head of a golf club out at the Veteran Affairs for military out where we live, retired military guys that were in Vietnam and the Iraq War, things like that. And he volunteered a lot out there. He helped people all the time. He helped me all my life. And he was very hard on me all my life. He really was. But I'm grateful for it because I can look backwards now and say he taught me things I needed to know in a very early on place where I may not have resonated with it, but now that I'm older, I do. Um, my grandfather got terminal cancer 2.5 years before he passed, and he got a rare leukemia that only 4% of people in the US get every year. It's a very under-researched cancer, and also a very aggressive one. You just can't kill it with chemo, which is really unfortunate. Um, I flew home in 2020 to see him, and he passed away one night in my arms 2 days after I got home. And so I watched him pass right in front of me. That was my first time watching that happen. I will just say, if you haven't experienced that, it's a very shocking and a very it'll rattle you in your cage. It'll rattle the crap out of you. Um, it was hard for me to go through that because I also had, family drama going on when I got home. I hadn't been home in close to a year, but there's lots of people fighting and having attitude problems and stuff like that. My focus was this is the end of life for him, and I just want him to be happy. I just want him to be
Mm,
comfortable, and whatever he needs, that's what I gave him. I said, "This is your time. It's not about me. I got plenty of years left on the planet." Um, so I was very honored by the way that night. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that. I didn't eat very well for a week, and I went into depression for 6 months after that. But I'll just say that he gave me a beautiful gift in that moment in so many ways, and I couldn't tell you that in the moment of things, but looking backwards, it was a big, big honor to be there for him in that capacity. And so I feel like he's never really left me, by the way. I don't know why, but
mm.
I always feel like he's still in my life in some capacities. So, but
What do you think he'd be uh, saying about you now? Looking down at what you've achieved and where you are in life now, what do you think? And you said that he is a social person, so he may be having a drink or two with friends around. So what would he saying to them about you?
uh, I know that he would be proud of me in a lot of ways. He would be. Um, there's areas of my life I'm pretty sure he's looking down saying, you could do better than that. You can get a lot more done over there. Um, I know he'd be proud of me. I just don't have a better way to say it, but we just had a very deep unspoken bond. And that's why that loss hurt me so bad. It's because he was the one person in my life that he never gave up on me. He never got short with me. He never, you know, I don't know. He just never treated me bad of any kind. He always just wanted the best for me, and he always pushed me to be better than I am every day. He always pushed me
Mm.
on that train. And so again, just like Caden, I try to honor him with what I do every day. I try to keep his legacy moving forward. I try to talk about him a lot. Um, like I said, he was just a character. He had all sorts of funny stories. The man. He climbed all the major mountain peaks in Washington State here in the United States back in the 70s. He was an avid sailboat racer, uh, 70s and 80s. He loved the outdoors. He served in the military. He had a family of three boys. He had a great job I think it was in a finance manager at a company back in the day. And he loved to golf. The man loved being out on the golf course. And so, being out there with everybody at the VA it was his happy place. And so he's just a very humble, down to earth guy. I miss him a lot. Like I said, he's the best man I've known.
Do you think he's teaching Caden now?
I think he's teaching Cade not to make mistakes like I did. So,
Do you
but
believe that they are together?
Oh, definitely. I've had some dreams after both of them passed that were all too real. And I don't know everybody's spiritual belief, but 30 days after he passed, I had a dream that was so real. I woke up crying at 4:30 in the morning out of a dead sleep. It felt like I talked to him for 2 hours. It was the most intense dream I've ever had. And it was vivid like you and I talking today is how real it was. And the same thing happened after Caden passed. Same thing, 30 days after. I had a dream of him and Caden. And so it makes me wonder, I don't think this life here on the planet is the end of things for us. I don't think it is. Um,
Mm.
I've had too many experiences I can't really put into words or put into descriptive things, but it was so real that I do believe there's more to this life than us being here.
Does it give you a sense of relief knowing that Caden is in good hands?
It does. After Caden passed, I said, I hope my grandfather can find him, and I hope my grandfather can take care of him. And when I got that dream after Caden passed, it was confirmation of that in a lot of ways. So I was very happy about that. And I know my grandfather's looking over him. I know that. My grandfather wouldn't let something like this slide. I know that. He would step up like he always did in life. My grandfather never took a backseat to a challenge. He never did.
Mm,
He was always very hands-on. Family was the most important thing to him. And he has a big, big heart.
okay. What did grief teach you?
That's a loaded question. What did grief teach me? I will share that grief will take you to some very dark places in your soul. And I will tell you right now, those are beautiful places to be. Grief is a lot of love with nowhere to go. And grief is what I share with people in my coaching practice, grief is a transformation journey because who you were before grief hit doesn't exist anymore. That person died. But what does exist is who you're going to become and what you're going to step into. And I'll share that grief is a very uncomfortable, very unpleasant place at times. It can feel like a raging ocean one day and it can feel like a calm sea the next. And so, on your journey of those sailing seas, as you're going closer to who you're becoming, uh, grief is going to show you that. It's going to reveal who you're meant to be. It's going to reveal where your alignment in life is going to take you. And
Mm,
like I said, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I was going to coach in the grief space, I probably would have looked at you funny and said, no, I'm not going to do that. And here I am. Grief put me on this course. And so I'm enjoying it. I'm passionate about what I do. I help other people every day. I also
mm.
get to hear other people's stories and learn from them. So be open-minded that grief is not the most comfortable place and it's very dark sometimes, but it will teach you some powerful, powerful lessons in your life that will ultimately give you what you need. And so honor that grief journey. If you're in the middle of it, honor it. It's the biggest gift you will ever get.
Despite it being very hard.
In spite of it being hard, it'll be your greatest gift. I always tell people when I talk about Caden, everybody says that's tragic. I mean, I can't fathom losing a child. That's difficult. That's hard. That sucks. It's all these things. And I say, it was. I'll say that. I couldn't tell you what I can now in the moment, but I can say now that he was my greatest gift. He really was. Everything that wasn't working in my life, by the way, dissipated after losing him. It was gone. All of it. The friendships, the toxic family, the jobs that weren't working out, all the hardships of life that were just relentless, they all went away. They all fell away. And so what Caden gave me, by the way, was a blank slate to go out there and build something new, to create. That's what he gave me. And he also gave me the reminder to say, everything you need is within you. You don't need to look elsewhere in the world. You don't need to look for it from other people. You don't need to go out there and please everything and everyone. You're not meant to serve everyone. You're not meant to do that. You're meant to go help people in a certain capacity. And so, because he gave me that gift, I
Mm.
celebrate him every day. He's no longer a tragedy in my life, but something I celebrate and I honor and I build a legacy for every day. And that's something that when you can get to that place in your grief journey, you will find out how powerful that is for you.
Does this mean that you don't have difficult days?
Oh, I still do. I'll tell you that.
Mm.
Every His birthday in particular and the holidays around Christmas, Thanksgiving, are very, very hard for me still. Last year was the worst one. I don't know why, but the year before that, it was, manageable and it was okay to navigate through. Last year, it was very difficult. I don't know why that was, but it got hard. And that's why I always said that grief is, either a raging ocean with lots of violent seas, or it's a calm sea. And so it's important to understand, I sit here and talk about honoring and remembrance and legacy a lot. It's taken a lot of work for me to get there, but that doesn't mean, by the way, that you're not going to have hard days. It does not mean that that grief is going to
Mm.
rear its ugly head one day and you're going to fall apart. It doesn't mean that you're not going to experience those things. You will. And that's where you've got to accept that part of yourself. And you also need to accept that you're never going to be fully healed. It's never going to happen. So just stop chasing it like it's an end goal. Grief and healing is a journey, and it's one that's never really going to get over it, but you're going to go through it and you're going to move forward with it. And that's the power of grief.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, are you able to share with the listeners or those that are watching this? You and I once were talking about grief, and I was a guest on your podcast. You shared with me that around a certain date, you were not yourself, and your wife, Christina, mentioned it to you, and then everything fell into place. Are you able to share with us what happened and how knowing that you weren't feeling good, it was due to the date and what it represented, but knowing gave you peace?
I'm really glad you brought that up, Carla. That's a powerful question you brought up. For the first year, on every 23rd of the month, I was a very cranky, very angry person right out of bed. I don't understand why or how, but that was a very, very hard day. And I just was not myself. And for I'd say at least a good 6 months, I couldn't figure it out. I just would stay in the house and not go out, not talk to people, and uh, just really isolate myself on those days. Um, what I didn't understand, by the way, is that all that anger that was happening on that day was um, Caden was born on the 23rd, and I missed him a lot. My brain somehow subconsciously wired itself in to say the 23rd is when you're going to remember Caden. 23rd's the day you're going to have all these memories going. And that's an example of, by the way, when grief rears its ugly head. That's what happened to me. And so after I caught on to that pattern, I when that started happening again, I started saying, every day on the 23rd, I'm going to memorize him. I'm going to, either make a social media post or I'm going to think about him or honor him in some way. I'm going to do that. And when I feel angry, that anger isn't anger. That anger is love for him. That anger is, I don't have my son here. That anger is, I wish he was here. Or what would it be like if he was here? That's what that anger is. It isn't even anger at that point. It's all my love I have for him. And once I recognized that pattern, like I said, recognize what those emotions were that were underneath all that, then I started living there. I didn't live in the anger, I lived in those other emotions.
Mm.
And that's why I'm able to celebrate him and honor him every day.
What do you wish you knew after the loss of Caden that you know now?
That's a tricky question for me. I will say everything happened the way it needed to, as much as I didn't
Okay.
like it in the moment. Um, what I can say, looking backwards on that moment is that that moment doesn't have to define you. It's not the end. I will say that it's not the end. It's a new beginning. It's a very painful one. It's one that you are going to need to hold space for yourself. You're going to need to give yourself room to process your emotions, process how you
Mm.
feel.
Mm.
Understand, by the way, that you've now experienced a trauma or a grief that's a very, very high magnitude, and it's going to cause a lot of, well, I like to call peaks and valleys. You're going to feel some very intense emotions, and you're going to feel some very dark holes. And it's going to go back and forth a lot, especially right in that moment. And so, giving yourself grace and kindness and compassion and empathy towards yourself is one of the best things you can do. And don't surround yourself with people, by the way, that are trying to get you to get over grief or move on from it or let go of that moment, by the way. Those are very unsafe people. You need to stay in that place. You need to be there. If you try, by the way, to get over it and move on, I will tell you it will catch up with you and not in a good way. It'll come out in the moment you least expect it or the least need it, and it'll create a bigger problem. So, this is my very polite way of telling you the opposite of what society says. Hold space for yourself. Listen to yourself. You're a human with emotions. You're not meant to be a robot and just pretend like it never happened.
We need to feel the feelings. Chris, you are the founder of the Empowered Grief Journey. Having experienced a very traumatic grief myself, how can a person be empowered in difficult times?
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions I've gotten in my coaching practice because of the name, and I'd love to share this, by the way. You're going to feel empowered at one point in your journey, but it's not going to happen right in the moment. So I always want to share that when you go through a hard loss, and I remember you telling me, Carla, about losing your mom and when you gave birth to your
Mm.
daughter, I remember that vividly. You're not going to feel empowered in that moment. There is no like, okay, I got this, I can do this. I'm gonna be fine. No, it doesn't work that way. Um, what I mean by empowered, by the way, is that giving yourself space to understand you, understand your needs, understand how you want to navigate this journey. I can't tell you how to do it. Everybody else is not going to be able to tell you how to do it. We can walk alongside you on that journey and we can ask questions, we can hold space for you, we can help you try to figure out and navigate that. And that's where you
Mm.
become empowered, is at a certain point in that journey. And for some people, that might be a month or 3 months or 3 years or 10 years. It might be those things. And I say this because everyone's journey is individual and everyone's journey is different. But being empowered by it is getting to that place of acceptance. When you can get to that place to say, I accept fully what happened, doesn't mean I like it, doesn't mean I agree to it, but it happened. And I'm willing to say that this was my experience with this. You can now become empowered because this is the liftoff point where you can say, I can take my grief with me. I can move forward with my grief. My grief is going to help me in these capacities. That's what it means to be empowered by grief.
To learn to live your new reality.
Exactly.
Chris, any last words you would like to end our chat with?
I just want to end this with a message to listeners today. If you were going through grief, loss, or even trauma, my biggest thing I could share with you is the world is going to tell you the wrong way to deal with this. They're going to tell you the wrong way to heal. The biggest thing I want you to know is this is your journey. This is your path. This is your life. It is all those things. Find people that support you, find people that hold space for you. Sit with your emotions, sit with your feelings, sit with your grief as long as you need to. Grief doesn't have a time frame on it. It doesn't have an expiration date. And I don't want you guys to miss out on your experience that you're going to have because when you go through your grief journey, just like I've expressed today on this podcast, you're going to have a beautiful story to go help another person that's gone through the loss, grief, or trauma that you've gone through. And that person, by the way, is going to be very, very grateful for what the gift you discovered through your own journey is going to help them. And you're going to be able to help people navigate things just a little bit easier, just like me. And so I want to inspire you that if you're in a dark place today, it is not going to be that way forever. And know that it's going to change and it will change in the time that it needs to. But this experience is going to give you a beautiful gift to give back to others. So I want you to try to stay positive as much as you can. When you're having those hard days, hold space for yourself, but know that this eventually is going to get to a place where you will become empowered by your grief, and your grief is going to give you a powerful, powerful gift for you to give back to others in this world.
Well, that is beautiful. Can I just actually ask you, why do you think people out there don't say the right things?
There's a lot of reasons why people don't. My biggest one that I've learned going through grief is that there's a lot of people out there that haven't dealt with their grief. And so when you try to actually do the right thing, dealing with your grief on your own, like I've shared with you guys, that person that hasn't dealt with grief is going to get really uncomfortable because they're seeing in you what they should be doing. And so that's why they'll say the wrong things to you. You're just making them uncomfortable. And so that's another thing that I'm going to share, by the way. As a griever, it's not your job to manage other people's emotions. You're only responsible to manage yours. And if it makes them uncomfortable, you're doing the healing work that somebody else hasn't done. And that doesn't make them bad people, by the way, but don't let that take away from your healing experience.
Chris, thank you so much for your time today. I am grateful for you, not only for recording this episode, but also for being the genuine person that you are. I do refer to you and Christina a lot in my practice when clients tell me that they don't believe in love or in healthy relationships. Um, I'm not very good at social media, but I am so grateful for it because we got to meet. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on the show today, Carla. And I really appreciate you letting me be a guest on your podcast today. And I consider you a friend from an ocean away, and I'm really glad we got to connect.
Take care, Chris.